As the National Park Service approaches its centennial in 2016, we feel it is more important than ever to redefine our role in America. 2 years ago, Foresight brought the idea of mounting Weiwei on Alcatraz to the Arts in the Parks program. And while At Large was a concept that was approved by the National Park Service, the content of the exhibition is eyes alone. Incredibly, Weiwei has never visited the island, yet his exhibition is unique and unmatched. And he does something that we wish all visitors do. And that is to look beyond the facts and the figures, to look beyond the myths of the popular stories, and to consider the question, how do the many personal and collective histories of our park challenge us to contemplate the meaning of freedom, justice, and equality? We thank Weiwei for sharing his work with us and the hundreds of volunteers and visitors to the island, and Cheryl Haynes for her commitment and vision and courage to bring Weiwei to Alcatraz.
I'm Cheryl Haynes. I'm the Executive Director of the Foresight Foundation and the curator of At Large, Weiwei on Alcatraz. Alcatraz receives 1.5 million visitors a year. That's nearly 5,000 people a day.
This is the first image one encounters in Weiwei at Large. It's the image from a very monumental piece called With Wind, Chinese dragon kite representing flight and freedom. And we come upon the sayings from various dissidents, people who suffered government oppression of one kind or another. First one we meet is Nelson Mandela. Our march to freedom is irreversible. And as we walk along, the next person we meet, essentially equated with Nelson Mandela, is the United States' own Edward Snowden. Privacy is a function of liberty. The piece is beautiful, it's lively, it's buoyant. I'm seeing a Jewish star over here. I'm not sure if that's meant to be a symbol of oppression or freedom. And now we come upon the artist himself. Every one of us is a potential convict. A message that seems very much to reinforce the idea that all nations are in one way or another oppressors of certain peoples. It's certainly been the case in this country in its past, if not its present. This is a piece that is making beauty out of provocation and out of a strong critique of oppressive societies. And this is the already famous Lego piece with about 175 dissidents. One of the very first people we encounter is our very own Edward Snowden. And on the other side, we have Martin Luther King, thereby again making the point that all societies have their people of conscience, dissidents, who have suffered for their beliefs. The piece goes way back in this huge hall. These images look a lot like surveillance camera images, splotchy, pixelated. I haven't heard anyone observe that yet, but it certainly seems to resonate with the surveillance conditions that Weiwei himself has had to endure, with cameras always watching his actions and keeping track of what he's doing. But somewhat surprisingly, Well, although China keeps close tabs on him, they haven't stopped him from doing this project.
We were asked to volunteer 4 days. So if you could do more, that would be great. I was lucky enough to complete one. On other days that I went there, I would do one part or finish something that somebody else couldn't complete. One day I spent 2 or 3 hours disassembling some panels because the artist had decided that he wanted to change the color scheme.
Oh, really?
Oh, so he was very much working with you while the process was going on.
You would get there was a Xerox box that was stacked top to bottom with these grids that had to be completed. And if you look across this room, you can see that there were hundreds of these panels to produce. The callus on my finger has
Is it still there?
after 3 or 4 weeks is finally healed. It was a thrilling project. I wanted to be part of this. I think it's great for San Francisco. San Francisco recently has been known for soaring rents and great restaurants, and just being sort of a place that is incredibly popular, but also has its social challenges. I think this transcends some of that. I think for San Francisco to host this piece, for it to be on Alcatraz, I felt it was going to be an historic event, and I wanted to be part of it. I would have never known this man. I probably would have never learned about him if it wasn't for this project. His name is Mohammed Al-Rogan. He is an attorney that represents human rights activists in the United Arab Emirates. He is now in prison for 10 years.
As is Ai Weiwei's attorney is now in prison, so a certain parallel now.
He is now in prison for doing just that. So this was sort of, for me personally, this was an invitation to get to know him. You create this portrait of him, so you must get to know him. And we were given a brief bio that's similar to the bios that you'll see in the notebooks that...
And they're on the website as well that people can access.
And so this was a starting point, and now to see all of these here and all of these people, I think I'll speak for all of us that we probably feel very comfortable and don't give human rights and freedom of expression a second thought.
Yeah.
But to think about what this man is going through, and then all of these others of what they're going through, it really does make you think about how fortunate we are and how we do have a personal responsibility to think about advocating, defending personal freedom, human rights. It's important.
One was originally supposed to walk on these Lego portraits. It would have given a real palpable kind of sense of connection to be right among them instead of gazing at a distance from them. Here's a very famous one. A woman of conscience who ultimately got her freedom. It's funny, but I kind of gravitate to female portraits here. Women too have fought battles and suffered for that. And this is one that really resonates with me. I was in Beijing shortly after Liu Xiaobo had been awarded the Nobel Prize, but was imprisoned for his dissident activities and not allowed to receive his prize in person. I believe he's still in prison, and that was a very famous case in China. Now we're in cell block A. This is a totally unrenovated original row of cells, and there's a piece here, a sound piece called Stay Tuned, where creative dissidents are heard in recitations or songs. And right here we've got Martin Luther King Jr. Beyond Vietnam, a time to break silence.
Though we might prefer otherwise, we must choose in this crucial moment of human history that noble bard of yesterday, James Russell Lowell, eloquently speaks. Once to every man and nation comes the moment to decide. into strife of truth and falsehood, for the very evil.
Elevated words in the most unelevated of circumstances. And this one, you can hear the rhythms of Fela, familiar to those of us who went to the play about him. A very charismatic figure, but also outspoken in his beliefs. We've got Pussy Riot.
Yeah.
This to me is one of the most powerful parts of the show. It's a rack of postcards, some pens, and each of these postcards is from a country where a political prisoner or a prisoner who's been incarcerated for his beliefs resides in prison. This flower here is from India. It's an Indian lotus. You can't really read this in my video. It's addressed to someone in a security ward in India, and you can write your message to that person. I guess the exhibition itself will supply the postage, and you drop it in here for mailing to the person who doesn't have a lot of contact with the outside world. And we're here in the dining hall of Alcatraz. There's several racks of these postcards here, and there's someone now who's writing on one.